At the heart of the Thope saga is a connection that defies simple categorization. Thomas, the brooding and often misunderstood Forrester heir, has long been drawn to Hope, the compassionate yet fiercely independent daughter of Brooke Logan. Their story began with a spark that was complicated by Thomas's troubled past, including his obsessive tendencies and manipulative behavior, which cast a shadow over their early interactions. Hope, on the other hand, brought a sense of moral grounding to their dynamic, often challenging Thomas to confront his demons and strive for personal growth. This push and pull has been the cornerstone of their relationship, creating a narrative that is as much about personal redemption as it is about love. The early days of their connection were fraught with obstacles. Thomas's fixation on Hope during her marriage to Liam Spencer created significant tension, as his actions often crossed ethical lines. From sabotaging Hope's relationships to orchestrating schemes to win her affection, Thomas's behavior was, at times, indefensible. Yet beneath his mistakes lay a genuine love for Hope, one that he struggled to express in healthy ways. For Hope, the challenge was balancing her compassion for Thomas with the need to protect herself from his volatility. This dynamic led to a series of dramatic confrontations, breakups, and reconciliations that kept viewers hooked. One of the pivotal moments in their story came when Thomas and Hope briefly gave in to their feelings, resulting in a passionate but short-lived romance. Their chemistry was undeniable, and for a moment, it seemed as though Thope might overcome their tumultuous history. However, external pressures, particularly from their families, quickly derailed their progress. The Forresters and Logans have a long history of feuding, and their disapproval of Thomas and Hope's relationship only added fuel to the fire. Steffy Forrester, Thomas's sister, and Brooke Logan, Hope's mother, were particularly vocal in their opposition, each believing the other party was a bad influence. The turning point for Thope came with the revelation of Thomas's role in a scandal involving a falsified paternity test, which wrongly suggested that Liam was not the father of Hope's child. This betrayal shattered Hope's trust in Thomas, effectively ending any chance of a reconciliation at the time. For many fans, this was the moment when Thope seemed doomed, as Hope's heartbreak and Thomas's remorse highlighted the seemingly insurmountable barriers between them. Yet, even in the aftermath of this scandal, the show's writers kept the door open for a potential reunion, planting seeds of hope through Thomas's efforts to redeem himself. In recent seasons, Thomas has undergone significant character development, working to atone for his past mistakes and prove himself worthy of Hope's trust. His journey has been one of self-reflection and growth, as he sought therapy, taken accountability for his actions, and focused on his career at Forrester Creations. This evolution has resonated with viewers, many of whom have begun to root for Thomas as an underdog in the romantic landscape of the show. Hope, too, has evolved, navigating her own struggles with her marriage to Liam and her growing independence as a businesswoman and mother. These parallel journeys have reignited interest in Thope, as fans speculate whether their shared growth could pave the way for a second chance. The question of whether Thomas and Hope can pick up where they left off hinges on several factors. First and foremost is the issue of trust. Hope's hesitation to fully embrace Thomas again is understandable, given their history. While Thomas has made strides in proving his sincerity, the scars of his past actions remain. For Hope, forgiving Thomas is not just about believing in his redemption, but also about protecting her own heart from further pain. The show has done an excellent job of portraying this internal conflict, with Hope torn between her lingering feelings for Thomas and her fear of repeating past mistakes. Another critical factor is the influence of their families. The Forrester-Logan rivalry has been a recurring theme on The Bold and the Beautiful, and it continues to complicate Thomas and Hope's relationship. Steffy's protective instincts toward her brother often manifest as skepticism about Hope's intentions, while Brooke's maternal concern leads her to view Thomas as a threat to her daughter's happiness. These familial dynamics create a constant tug-of-war, forcing Thomas and Hope to navigate not only their own feelings, but also the expectations and prejudices of those around them. The question is whether their love, if it can be called that, can withstand this external pressure. The show's writers have also introduced new romantic interests for both characters, adding layers of complexity to the Thope narrative. Hope's on-again, off-again relationship with Liam has long been a source of tension, as Liam's indecisiveness and lingering feelings for Steffy create instability in his marriage to Hope. Meanwhile, Thomas has been paired with other characters, though none have sparked the same level of fan enthusiasm as his connection with Hope. These competing romantic arcs serve to keep viewers guessing, as the show teases the possibility of Thope reuniting, while simultaneously exploring other possibilities. One of the strengths of the Thope storyline is its ability to resonate with audiences on an emotional level. Fans of the couple are drawn to the idea of two flawed individuals finding redemption through love, a theme that has been a hallmark of soap operas for decades. Thomas's journey from villain to anti-hero mirrors Hope's own evolution from naive ingenue to empowered woman, creating a sense of symmetry that feels both poetic and compelling. Their shared history, while fraught with pain, also serves as a foundation for a deeper connection, as they understand each other's struggles in ways that others cannot. The fanbase for Thope is passionate and vocal, often taking to social media platforms like X to express their hopes for a reunion. Posts on X reveal a divide among viewers. Some believe that Thomas and Hope are soulmates destined to overcome their obstacles, while others argue that their history is too toxic to sustain a healthy relationship. This debate has fueled countless discussions, with fans analyzing every glance, touch, and conversation between the two characters for signs of romantic potential. The show's writers have leaned into this enthusiasm, dropping subtle hints, such as lingering looks or charged moments, that keep the Thope flame alive. From a narrative perspective, the possibility of Thomas and Hope picking up where they left off is both tantalizing and fraught with challenges. The show thrives on keeping viewers on edge, and a straightforward reunion would risk undermining the tension that has made Thope so compelling. Instead, the writers are likely to continue teasing the possibility, introducing new obstacles and developments to keep the audience invested. Whether this means a slow-burn reconciliation or a definitive end to their romance remains to be seen, but the uncertainty is part of what makes the storyline so addictive. One potential path forward for Thope is a storyline that focuses on rebuilding trust. The show could explore Thomas and Hope working together on a professional project at Forrester Creations, allowing them to reconnect on a platonic level before delving back into romance. This approach would give Hope the time she needs to see Thomas's growth firsthand, while also allowing Thomas to demonstrate his commitment to change. Such a storyline would also provide opportunities for the kind of emotionally charged scenes that have become a hallmark of their dynamic, from heartfelt confessions to heated arguments. Another possibility is the introduction of a new external threat that forces Thomas and Hope to unite. Whether it's a corporate rival threatening Forrester Creations or a personal crisis affecting one of their families, a shared challenge could bring them closer together, highlighting their compatibility and mutual support. This type of plot device is common in soap operas, as it allows characters to bond under pressure, while also advancing the larger narrative. Of course, the show could also choose to keep Thomas and Hope apart, focusing instead on their individual growth. This would be a bold move, as it would prioritize character development over fan expectations, but it could also pave the way for a more satisfying reunion down the line. By allowing both characters to fully come into their own, the writers could set the stage for a Thope romance that feels earned rather than rushed. Ultimately, the question of whether Thomas and Hope can pick up where they left off is less about their past and more about their future. The Bold and the Beautiful has always excelled at crafting complex, emotionally resonant stories, and the Thope saga is no exception. Whether they reunite as lovers or remain star-crossed, their journey will continue to captivate audiences, proving that sometimes, the most compelling love stories are the ones that keep us guessing. Thomas stepped off the plane at LAX, the dry heat of Los Angeles hitting him like a wave. He adjusted the brim of his worn baseball cap, squinting against the sun as he scanned the terminal. It had been years since he'd set foot in this city, years since he'd seen Grace, but the message she'd sent him 2 weeks ago still burned in his mind. A single line, desperate and raw. "I'm in trouble, Tom. I don't know who else to call." No details, no explanation, just an address and a plea. That was enough to pull him back from the quiet life he'd scraped together in Seattle, back to the chaos of LA and the ghosts he'd left behind. He slung his duffel bag over his shoulder and made his way to the rental car counter. Grace's message hadn't given much away, but he'd done some digging before booking his flight. A quick search on his phone had turned up a local news article from a few days ago. Grace Harper, 34, arrested for her alleged involvement in a high-profile art theft. The details were sparse, but the charges were serious: Felony theft, conspiracy, and something about crossing state lines. The Grace he knew wasn't a criminal, at least not in the way the papers made it sound. She was sharp, resourceful, and maybe a little reckless, but stealing art? That didn't add up. Something was wrong, and he wasn't going to sit on his hands 1,000 miles away while she rotted in a cell. The rental car was a beat-up sedan with a faint smell of cigarette smoke. Thomas tossed his bag in the back and drove straight to the county jail where Grace was being held. The building loomed like a concrete fortress, all sharp angles and barred windows. He parked, took a deep breath, and walked inside, his boots echoing on the linoleum floor. The woman at the front desk barely looked up as he asked about visiting hours. "You a lawyer?" she asked, her voice flat. "No, just a friend," Thomas said. She handed him a form to fill out and told him to wait. The waiting area was a grim mix of plastic chairs and flickering fluorescent lights, filled with people who looked as tired and worn as he felt. He sat, running his fingers over the edge of his cap, trying to piece together a plan. He didn't have much to work with, just a gut feeling that Grace was caught in something bigger than her, and the stubborn need to get her out. When they finally let him see her, Grace looked different. Not older exactly, but harder, like the last few years had sanded down her edges. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes, usually bright with defiance, were shadowed with exhaustion. She sat behind the glass partition, picking at her nails, and when she saw him, her face flickered with something, relief, maybe, or guilt. "Tom," she said through the phone, her voice low. "You didn't have to come." "Yeah, I did," he said, leaning forward. "What the hell happened, Grace?" She glanced around like she was checking for eavesdroppers, then leaned closer to the glass. "It's a long story. I didn't steal anything, I swear. I got mixed up with some people, bad people. They set me up." "Who's they?" Thomas asked. She hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. "I can't talk about it here. But I didn't do what they're saying. I was just in the wrong place, wrong time." Thomas didn't buy the wrong place, wrong timeline. Grace had a knack for finding trouble, always had. Back when they were kids, running around the cracked sidewalks of their old neighborhood, she was the one who'd talk him into sneaking into abandoned buildings or boosting candy from the corner store. But this was different. This wasn't petty mischief. This was serious, and she was scared. "I'm getting you out," he said, his voice steady despite the knot in his chest. "Whatever it takes." Her eyes softened, but she shook her head. "You don't know what you're signing up for, Tom. These people, they don't mess around. Then tell me who they are, and I'll deal with it." She didn't answer, just looked down at her hands. The guard signaled that their time was up, and Thomas left the jail with more questions than answers. He needed a plan, and he needed Lilliputian information about it. Grace wasn't talking, but he wasn't walking away. Not yet. Back in his car, Thomas pulled out his phone and started making calls. He didn't have many contacts left in LA, but he still knew a couple of people who owed him favors. One was an old friend, Marcus, who'd gone from street hustling to running a semi-legit private investigation business. Marcus agreed to meet him at a dive bar in Hollywood that night, a place with sticky floors and a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the 90s. Marcus slid into the booth across from Thomas, a glass of whiskey in hand. He was a big guy, broad-shouldered, with a shaved head and a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Heard you were back in town," Marcus said. "Didn't think I'd see you again after, what was it, 3 years?" "4, Thomas said. "I need your help." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Straight to business, huh? What's the deal?" Thomas laid it out. Grace's arrest, the art theft charges, her vague story about being set up. Marcus listened, sipping his drink, his face unreadable. "Art theft's no joke," Marcus said when Thomas finished. "You sure she's clean?" "She's not a thief," Thomas said, though he wasn't entirely sure himself. "She's in over her head, though. I need to know who she's tangled up with." Marcus leaned back, swirling his glass. "You're asking me to dig into some dangerous people, my friend. Art theft isn't street-level stuff. We're talking organized crews, maybe even international. You got any names to start with?" "No," she wouldn't say. "But I need you to find out." Marcus sighed. "It's gonna cost you. I don't work for free, and this kind of info doesn't come cheap." "I'll pay," Thomas said, though he wasn't sure how. His savings were thin, and his job as a mechanic in Seattle barely covered rent. But he'd figure it out. He always did. Marcus agreed to start digging, but he warned Thomas to stay low. If these people are who I think they are, they don't like loose ends. You start poking around, you're gonna get noticed. Thomas didn't care about getting noticed. He cared about Grace. That night, he checked into a cheap motel and lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling. He thought about the old days, him and Grace, young and fearless, thinking they could take on the world. They'd been close back then, closer than friends, but life had pulled them apart. He'd left LA without looking back, chasing a fresh start. She'd stayed, and now she was paying for it. The next morning, Marcus called with a lead. "Got a name for you," he said. "Vincent Delgado. Runs a high-end art dealership downtown, but word is he's got his fingers in a lot of dirty pies. Smuggling, fencing, you name it. Your girl might have crossed him." Thomas's stomach tightened. Delgado's name rang a bell, a faint memory from the news. A slick, connected guy who always seemed to slip through the cracks. If Grace was mixed up with him, she was in deeper than Thomas had thought. He drove to Delgado's gallery, a sleek building with floor-to-ceiling windows and abstract sculptures out front. The place screamed money, the kind of money that didn't come clean. Thomas didn't go inside, not yet. He parked across the street and watched, taking note of the people coming and going. Most of them looked like they belonged in a different world. Rich, polished, oblivious. But a couple of guys caught his eye. Hard-looking types in cheap suits, their eyes scanning the street like they were expecting trouble. Thomas spent the day tailing them, keeping his distance. They led him to a warehouse in an industrial part of town, a place that looked abandoned but wasn't. He saw crates being loaded into a van, and one of them was marked with a symbol he recognized from the news article about the stolen art. A stylized red bird. This was it. This was the connection. He called Marcus from the car. "I found something. A warehouse, crates with a red bird logo. You know anything about it?" Marcus swore under his breath. "You don't mess around, do you? That's Delgado's operation. He uses that logo for his legit business, but it's a front. Those crates are probably full of stolen goods. You need to be careful, Tom. You go in there half-cocked, you're a dead man." "I'm not going in," Thomas said. "Not yet. But I need you to find out where those crates are going." Marcus grumbled but agreed to keep digging. Thomas drove back to the motel, his mind racing. He needed a way to get to Delgado without tipping him off. He needed leverage and he needed it fast. Grace's bail hearing was in 2 days, and if he didn't have something solid by then, she'd be stuck in jail, or worse. That night he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing Grace's face behind that glass, the fear in her eyes. He'd failed her once by leaving LA, by leaving her to fend for herself. He wasn't going to fail her again. The next day, Marcus came through with an address. A shipping yard where Delgado's crates were headed. Thomas drove there at dawn, parking a block away and slipping into the yard on foot. The place was a maze of shipping containers and forklifts, but he spotted the van from the warehouse, parked near a loading dock. He crept closer, staying low, and peered inside an open crate. Paintings, sculptures, artifacts, all high-end, all probably stolen. He snapped photos with his phone, his heart pounding. This was the evidence he needed. But as he turned to leave, a hand grabbed his shoulder. He spun around, fist raised, and found himself face to face with one of Delgado's men. The guy was big, with a scar running down his cheek and a gun in his hand. "You lost, pal?" the guy said, his voice low and threatening. Thomas didn't think. He swung, catching the guy in the jaw. The gun clattered to the ground, and Thomas dove for it, but another man appeared, this one faster. A fist slammed into Thomas's gut, doubling him over. He fought back, landing a punch, but there were too many of them now, 3, maybe 4. He was outnumbered, and he knew it. Just as he thought he was done for, a shout rang out. "Enough!" A man stepped forward, sleek and polished, with dark hair and a tailored suit. Vincent Delgado. Thomas recognized him from the news. Delgado waved his men off, his eyes locked on Thomas. "You're a long way from home, Mr. Carter," Delgado said, his voice smooth as silk. "Care to tell me why you're sneaking around my property?" Thomas spat blood onto the ground, his mind racing for a way out. "I know what you're doing," he said. "And I know you set up Grace Harper." Delgado's smile didn't waver. "Bold accusations. You have proof. Thomas held up his phone, the photos still on the screen. Right here. Delgado's eyes narrowed, and for the first time his smile faltered. You're a problem, Mr. Carter. I don't like problems. Thomas braced himself, expecting a fight, but Delgado just laughed. Take him to the office, he told his men. We'll have a little chat. They dragged Thomas to a small office inside a shipping container, tying him to a chair. Delgado sat across from him, casual, like they were having coffee. You care about Miss Harper, don't you? He said. That's sweet. But you're in over your head. She was useful for a while. But she got greedy. Thought she could play me. She didn't steal anything, Thomas said, his voice rough. You framed her. Delgado shrugged. Maybe. Maybe not. Either way, she's where she belongs. And if you want to join her, keep poking around. Thomas glared at him. You're not as untouchable as you think. Delgado leaned forward, his eyes cold. Don't test me, Carter. You won't like what happens. But Thomas wasn't listening. His hands were working at the ropes behind his back, loosening them bit by bit. He just needed time. He kept Delgado talking, asking questions, stalling. Delgado loved the sound of his own voice, and Thomas used that. By the time the ropes were loose enough, Delgado's men had let their guard down. Thomas moved fast, breaking free and tackling Delgado to the ground. The men rushed in, but Thomas was already out the door, sprinting through the maze of containers. He heard shouts behind him, the crack of a gunshot, but he didn't stop. He made it to his car, his hands shaking as he started the engine. He drove straight to the police station, the photos on his phone burning a hole in his pocket. The cops weren't thrilled to see him, but the photos got their attention. They started asking questions, pulling up files, making calls. Thomas didn't stick around to hear the rest. He drove to the jail, his heart still racing. Grace's bail hearing was that afternoon, and with Delgado's operation exposed, she had a chance. When she walked out of the jail that evening, free on bail, she ran to Thomas and threw her arms around him. You did it, she whispered, her voice breaking. Not yet, he said, holding her tight. But I'm not stopping until you're clear. They stood there in the fading light, two broken pieces of a past life, holding on to each other. Thomas didn't know what came next, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was where he belonged.